Hey there folks, and welcome back. To give you a little bit of background for this particular episode, I'm going to be building a PC for my PS4 buddy at work. He usually games on his PS4 and wants to transition over to his PC. He has all of the parts purchased except for the monitor and GPU, because who in the hell is going to spend $800+ to buy a high-end graphics card? So while he waits to get his high-end GPU, I offered to give him something that can get him gaming on his PC in the meantime, so his gaming friends will finally stop bugging him about it. The only thing is that he wants to know how it will perform in the games that he tends to play. With that out of the way, let's get on to the card that we will be looking at. This is the Radeon HD 7870. It's a DirectX 12 capable card based off of the GCN architecture. It's actually very similar to the PS4's graphics chip with a couple of pros and a couple of cons. It's based off the same microarchitecture and is about the same size. Starting off with the pros, this GPU has 1,280 stream processors, which is 128 more than the PS4's 1,152 cores. In addition, the 7870 has 80 texture mapping units, which is 8 more than the PS4's 72. In addition, the HD 7870 is clocked at a solid gigahertz, where the PS4 only has to make do with 800 megahertz. Another tangential benefit that is not directly related to the card itself is that the HD 7870 will be put in a rocking system with an 8-core SMT Ryzen 2700X with a boost clock of 4.3 GHz. That is a far cry from the PS4's meager 8 Jaguar cores that clock in at a paltry 1.6 GHz. In addition, the architecture that the Jaguar cores are based off of is a low-power laptop architecture, which severely limits overall performance. These chips are slow. So slow, in fact, they probably think Continental Drift is a Fast and Furious movie. Now, onto the cons of this chip in relation to the PS4. Well, it won't receive any console-specific optimization, that's kind of a given, but overall it still should be faster due to being paired with a much better overall system. The only other downside is that the PS4 shares 8GB of system RAM with the GPU, allowing it higher overall memory access than the 2GB allotted on this specific card. However, as you will see in the performance section, it's not really that big of a deal at all. And speaking of which, on to the benchmarks. Because I'm making this video specifically for my friend, I benchmarked the games that he wanted. They were Destiny 2, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto 5, PUBG, and Doom. I tested the games at both 720p because that's the size monitor he has, and 1080p for everybody else who's interested in this card's performance. So without further delay, let's get started. The first game that we tested was Grand Theft Auto 5. At 720p, we were able to crank the settings easily up to high. And at these settings, we got a nice and smooth 75 FPS average. It only ever dipped down to 48 and topped out at over 107 frames per second. Overall, a very smooth gaming experience. At 1080p medium settings, the story was even better. Not only did the game look fantastic, but it played better as well. The low was only a bit higher at 51, but the average was much higher at over 90 frames per second. In addition, while flying, the frame rate rose as high as 135. In Fortnite at 720p, we were able to max out the settings with a 120% render scale. At those settings, the average was a smooth 64, with it reaching as high as 87, and it only ever dipped down to 36 during the most intense moments. For 1080p, we dropped the settings down to high, and at 1080p, we were able to pull a 54 FPS average, with it climbing as high as 79, with it only ever dipping down as low as 35. PUBG is a notoriously difficult game to run, however this card handled it like a champ. At 720p high settings, we got a very nice 76 FPS average with a low down to 34 and it reaching as high as 138. It's more than enjoyable at these settings, however, let's see how it handles 1080p. At 1080p medium settings, the game is far more crisp and easier on the eyes. With an average of 47, it's also quite smooth and enjoyable. During some bits, it got as high as 93. However, there was some slight stutter present, likely due to the fact that I'm benching this card on a 9-year-old server chip with equally as old and slow RAM, so on a newer system, it should do just fine. Doom, on the other hand, ran like a dream at both 720p and 1080p. At 720p high settings, we got a buttery smooth 98 frames per second average, with it reaching as high as 146 and only unnoticeably dipping down to 44 FPS for very brief moments. At 1080p medium settings, the game looks way better and still feels just as smooth despite the lower 56 FPS average. It climbed as high as 91 in certain parts and never dipped below the 30 FPS VSync. Finally, Destiny 2, the game my buddy plays the most. At 720p high settings, it averages a solid 78 FPS and rarely dipped far below. At 1080p medium settings, the story was much the same, with a solid 63 FPS average and a minimum of 48. It's both extremely smooth and playable on this game, not to mention the fact it looks great as well. Overall, the HD 7870 has held up great over time and is still a fantastic option for those gamers on a budget. And I hope when my buddy sees this video, it'll give him an idea of what he's been missing, even if it's only a temporary solution for his beast gaming machine. So thank you folks for watching, and as always, may your frame rates be high and your prices low, and I'll catch you folks next time.